know what apps are on your kid's phone? The average teen has more than 40 apps, and keeping up with them is nearly impossible. Now, it's not that parents aren't paying attention. It's that the system isn't built to keep them informed. Some apps look harmless, but they let kids chat with complete strangers where they're exposed to predators and sexually explicit content. Other apps are used for anonymous messaging, secret conversations, and even black market deals. Some of these dangerous apps are even designed to hide from parents, disguising themselves as seemingly normal apps like calculators or flashlights. And kids can download and delete these apps without any parental oversight after school, at a friend's house, or even during class. And when parents check their kid's phone, well, they might never know.
The App Store Accountability Act fixes this by making parental approval the default. Every app, every time. No more unknown downloads, no more disappearing apps, no more surprises. Giving parents this important tool is the first step, but the App Store Accountability Act would also stop app stores to practice of mislabeling apps. Time and time again, investigations have found that apps with chat features, explicit content, and financial risks are labeled as safe for kids. A messaging app where kids are bullied and exploited is rated for 12 plus. An app that lets strangers send untraceable payments to minors might be labeled suitable for 4-year-olds.
Requiring parental approval for app downloads also ends the illogical process of allowing kids to agree to complex terms of service. Most parents wouldn't let a 12-year-old sign a legal contract with a billion-dollar company. But in the digital world, that's every day. One click and kids are agreeing to terms they don't understand, handing over location, contacts, and even access to their camera and microphone. And right now, app stores let this happen with zero oversight. The App Store Accountability Act changes that. App stores will verify ages and require parental approval before kids can sign contracts or make purchases. That means kids can't legally hand over their data unless parents allow it. Parents will finally get the truth about what their kids are downloading. The App Store Accountability Act makes protecting kids simple. It holds big tech accountable and puts parents back in the driver's seat. The App Store Accountability Act makes sure kids aren't left unprotected in the digital world. Learn more at appstoreaccountability.org.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks to our old friend Chris McKenna for that video for our friends here that we're going to talk about. Yeah, here is fine, y'all. Well, good morning, welcome. My name is Joseph Kohm. I'm the policy director here at FPA, if I have not gotten the chance to meet you. If you were in my plenary session yesterday afternoon, we celebrated a landmark Supreme Court victory, and then we talked about some policies that gives us a foundation stone to push forward into as we press our advance in that issue area. We're going to do something similar today, not exactly the same, but similar. We are going to celebrate another great Supreme Court victory, but one that I think has been a little bit less reported, maybe a little less well known than the Scrimeti case we talked about yesterday. And that is a case called Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. The Free Speech Coalition is a trade group that represents the adult pornography industry. And Paxton is who you're thinking of, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and he was the party to that suit because Free Speech Coalition, on behalf of the pornography industry, brought suit to challenge Texas's law protecting kids from exposure to online pornography through mandatory age verification procedures. 22 other states have now passed that law. This was a campaign that FPA was encouraged to get into by some of our allies at the early stages when about 7 states had already passed it, and our FPCs, many of you got behind it. We're so thankful to you for doing that. This was yet another case where a wave of socially conservative legislation driven by all of you put the court in a position where they had to review this constitutionally, and this morning we're celebrating that they did just that. The Supreme Court ruled, including Justice Thomas actually highlighted the importance of age verification laws, stating that age verification is common and the need for it is greater now than ever because of the type of material children has access to. Many of you have seen our research on this, or at least the ones that FPA has collected. I'm not going to go over that, but the bottom line is that pornography has become sex education for kids, and it is fueling the human trafficking industry that we all oppose on principle. So what we're going to talk about today is because of this landmark ruling, which really is enormous, and I don't want to overstate it before we get in, is a springboard from which we can go forward to more good policies to protect kids more holistically online. And one of those that FPA is proud to endorse and really wants to push forward in the coming years, as you heard from Chris, is the App Store Accountability Act. So just some thank yous to some people who got us here. I want to thank, as always, the FPC movement. This is once again a vindication of your efforts to get a wave of socially conservative legislation passed. Also, all the state legislators who championed these bills. This was a courageous effort, and I got to work with some of you and some who are not here, particularly even more recently just in a state like Arizona. It's popular this is a popular victory to show how bipartisan these bills are. That was Arizona Representative Nick Cupper and his wife Crystal sponsored that bill, and they got Governor Hobbs to sign that bill. I mentioned that case because they deserve the recognition, and Representative Cupper is here as a statesman. Yeah, please applaud for him. He deserves it. And all the legislators that did this. Arizona is also instructive because it's what you might call purple, maybe blue state. Point is, it is incredibly bipartisan. And I'm with people here also who helped me get this through at least part of the way through other very, very blue states. So I want you to see this as a bipartisan policy. All of this notion of protecting kids online is something people across the aisle, thankfully, still feel like is something everybody ought to agree with. So I'm thankful to those legislators, all the national allies that have supported us here, including on stage and in the audience through our Let Parents Parent campaign, and to those in Texas who were able to bring this bill and then defend it so successfully, so excellently at the court. That's what's put us here. And I've got an incredible panel of people who are frankly some of my heroes to talk about the work they've done and the work they're going to do and how you can work with them to better protect our kids and empower parents in the digital age. So with that, I want to introduce my panelists. I'm going to take my seat among them. To my left here is Melissa McKay. She is the founder and chair of Digital Childhood Alliance, which has become a wonderful new ally for FPA. And they've written the model policy that you just saw the video of. She's going to tell us about it in a minute. Next to her is Helen Taylor from Exodus Cry, which is an anti-human trafficking ministry. She's the vice president there. And next to her is Stephanie Smith. Stephanie's the president of Alabama Policy Institute, who is our state family policy council in Alabama. So ladies, thank you for joining me today. It's an honor to be up here with you. And I'm excited for what you're going to share with our group and how you're going to inspire them. So we're going to start with the App Store Accountability Act, and then Helen, I'll move to you to talk about the anti-porn angle and how it overlaps into your work. So for the App Store Accountability Act, Melissa, a lot of people in this room have worked with you on a version of it. Stephanie's one of them. But a lot of people have not. And this is really an innovative piece of model legislation that me and my team have just been so impressed with since we first saw it. And we just love how holistic it is in terms of protecting kids in almost every way they could be in danger online. So for people in here who are not familiar with it, we at FPA consider this to be the next critical step to protect our kids in this brave new digital age world. So Melissa, just tell us, what is the App Store Accountability Act? What are the elements of it and how does it work?
Sure, so Chris kind of discussed that briefly on the video, but there's basically 3 parts. And I just want to back up, give you a little history about how I got into this and why I determined that the App Store was one of the most important places to regulate. So I am a mother in Utah. I have 5 kids. And at the time when I started getting into this, I had 5 really little kids. And we were starting to get devices for our kids, and it was like, it didn't matter what we did, how educated I was. I felt like I was always playing whack-a-mole. There's some back door here, or there was some new app that I didn't know about, or people thought this app was safe and it wasn't. So back in 2018, I think it was, at the time, everybody was telling kids to get on Instagram. I mean, our church was saying, share the gospel on Instagram. School programs were saying, go get on Instagram. We're all in our little group here. And I got on Instagram and I'm like, this app is horrible. Like the amount of exploitation and the amount of pornography on this app. And I was like, why does nobody know how bad this app is? And I was like, well, it's rated 12 plus and everybody thinks it's safe. So the first component of the App Store Accountability Act that is so important is we are going to require accurate app age ratings on these apps. Right now, unlike movies and video games that have a third-party group that rate them, developers rate the apps themselves. And Apple has only about 500 moderators, so each app gets about 12 minutes of review. So a lot of apps will say, hey, we're safe for a 12-year-old. Like this latest Grok AI, I don't know if you guys saw that in the news. said, we're safe for 12-year-olds. Well, it's got a highly sexualized pornographic AI character in there that will talk to kids about bondage and extremely sexual things. And they say it's rated safe for a 12-year-old. So the first component of this bill will securely tie age ratings to states' deceptive advertising laws. And so that parents have some recourse when their kids are harmed on apps that are deceptively rated. Up until now, they haven't. The second part of this app that is so important is age verification at the App Store level. The thing that is really unique about app stores is they already have your age data. When you open an account within the first 5 steps, you have to put in your birth date. And if you're an adult, you put a credit card in the digital wallet. So all of the age verification data is already there. Parents affirm their kids' ages. So there's 2 models right now. There's the App Store age verification model and the developer model, where if the developers handled the age verification, you would have to give your sensitive private data, including parental structure, to all, depending on how many apps you use, but the average kids use 40 up to 200 apps. And so we're saying the best place to age verify should be at the App Store, where they broker, where they're taking 30%, and they already have the age data. They can ping over a little tiny anonymous cookie about an age range, and it will protect kids. So the second, age verification. The third is parental consent. Right now, app stores treat 13-year-olds like an adult. So if your child has an Android device, on their 13th birthday, they get an email that says, you're an adult now, do you want to remove parental supervision? And they can say yes, and the parents have no choice. Literally 13-year-olds can remove themselves from the supervision. On Apple products, they stop reminding parents. And so because it takes 20 steps to set up, a lot of parents never attach themselves to their kids. So we're saying kids are kids all the way to 18, and they can't sign contracts. And so every child under the age of 18, every time they download an app, because it's a new terms of service agreement, and every time they have an in-app purchase, there should be a moment of parental consent, because you want to put an adult between every child and $1 billion company and their exploitative products. So anyway, that's the 3 parts of it, and it's something we feel like the App Store should have been doing for the last 20 years. They just haven't, so now we're regulating.
The amount of work that has gone into the App Store Accountability Act from Melissa and her team primarily has just been unbelievable to watch, and it has paid off. It's an incredible piece of legislation. I want to show you this map, this legislation map from FPA, because this marks out the states that have passed either some form of age verification law for pornography and some form of either the App Store Accountability Act or just age verification specifically applied to social media. We have it set up that way because the coalition that we're catering to wants to know those specific things. But 3 or 4 of those states that have the App Store Accountability Act now? 3. Yeah. So we're at 3 now. We want to see this be the next wave of legislation to protect kids holistically out there in this new world. And we think Digital Childhood Alliance, they're some of our best allies to make this happen. Stephanie's going to tell us about that in a minute. I have one more question, though, for Melissa, because I want our audience to be prepared for this. So this field, we started taking on the big pornography companies, and they're not easy to distinguish, but you at least know who they are and you know where they stand. When it gets to coming to app stores, because it's so much broader in the big tech industry, it brings in a whole new slate of adversaries who are much more slippery and murky and really just not good dealers. And that everybody in this room, particularly the FPCs, you're used to facing serious lobbyists who disagree with you. This animal from big tech is a different one, and it comes with really unique challenges. And I want to focus the rest of at least our time in the ASAA on that. So Melissa, you fought these people at every turn, just knockdown dragouts in the state houses that we've gotten this past. This is why you're one of my heroes. I just know these allies need to be prepared and have a sense of what to expect. So broadly speaking, and we'll go specifically to Stephanie, I want them to tell us what it's like facing down people from Apple and Google, these big tech giants, and principles you've learned in dealing with them.
Sure. So I've been a child advocate for 10 years. This is my 6th piece of child safety legislation, and I had no idea what I was getting into. The scale of the opposition, the intensity, the lies. Just to give you, I'll give you 3 quick examples, and I'll give you just kind of a warning. Any legislator who wants to take on this bill, you have to have a thick skin and a spine of steel. Otherwise, don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So we introduced it in Utah, and I just thought this is a great idea. Like, everyone's going to be on board with this, right? Who doesn't want accurate age ratings, right? Who doesn't want kids to have parental consent? And I walked out of the very first hearing, and I was accosted by the Retailers Association and AT&T, basically Walmart. And they're like, hey, we just have a few little amendments for you. You know, we like your idea, just a few little amendments. We'll send them over later tonight. We're sending this to our legal team. So I was like, okay, you know, I can work with you guys. We like you. Like, I look at their amendments, gutted the whole bill. They do not want to know when a kid is on their app. Because of COPPA, if they know a kid is on their app, they cannot scrape and sell their data. And they have to protect them. So nobody wants to know if it's a kid on their app. Next, it was Roblox. And Roblox and the video game industry makes so much money on in-app purchases when parents aren't consenting. They call it friendly fraud, and a huge percentage of their business model is based around this friendly fraud. So if parents have to consent, the amount of purchases go way down. So Roblox hires the ex-partner of the current Utah Attorney General to come in, misquoted Chair Andrew Ferguson on something, and told me that requiring in-app parental consent was a race to the bottom. And he just like harassed my senator for like days. And I finally I had to pull out the 2014 FTC consent decree and say, they're already supposed to be doing this anyway. Finally, the ESA, the video game companies, I'll get a little to Apple and Google, but the video game companies, like, I was getting an amendment from them probably every 48 hours. And it got to the point where they were just trying to change one word to try to poison pill the entire bill. For example, under our definition of mobile device, it says the mobile device has to have access to cellular or wireless connectivity. They tried to change that or to an and, which would have cut out 90% of iPads and phones that don't have internet, access. The only reason they're doing that is to poison pill the bill, right? And we were seeing those amendments over and over and over again, and people were like, well, what's the big deal? Adding the word download here or adding a word and here, they're all like crafted by these $800 an hour attorneys to just undermine the entire bill. And I'll let Stephanie talk about Apple and Google, but it's just been, they have lied about our bill. They're sending people after us personally to discredit us. That is like a whole new level, but I'll let Stephanie take that. So.
I'll just add, even in the messaging side of things, Apple or Google will tweet things about the bill, like beautiful graphics through their whole, capabilities in terms of marketing behind it. And it'll just be outright lies. They did this in Texas. It was shocking when that tweet came out. And I get the privilege of just watching this from afar. I don't get to help that much. But seeing it is just astounding. You all will have to deal with this, but you can do it, which is why I want Stephanie to give you a specific example of how this played out in a state, because this is where you'll find it really relatable. Stephanie's a president of an FPC. You've worked with statesmen so many times. So what you can give to them is really invaluable in terms of your examples, Stephanie. So you worked with Melissa on this bill in Alabama. You fought them, the big tech lobbyists, alongside her, albeit from a distance. Just tell us what that was like specifically. How did it play out in your state house?
Yeah, so we're kind of the cautionary tale this morning, and I appreciate being up here on the panel. I appreciate so much the work that went into this before we were even brought in as a partner, because a lot of times we get handed legislation that needs work, or I call it needs Alabamification. And this didn't. We were on board from the first day. But I want to talk, I want to give y'all kind of the understanding of what happened in Alabama so that you can learn from our mistakes, and also you know what you're up against. And I will say this as a word of encouragement. It's worth it. Going up against the big tech guys, going up against the vast majority of the contract and corporate lobbyists in the state of Alabama, it's a daunting task, but that's what we're here for. And it's exactly why I'm in this role. And if we're not fighting for kids and the protection of children, what are we doing in this room? So just a word of encouragement and a little bit of a call to action. Just because something is hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Sometimes because something is hard, it means we should do it. So they're trying to protect themselves, and we're trying to protect children. We have, we have right on our side. So With that, I wanted to get pretty specific, and actually Melissa has dealt with this, for longer than I have and in more states than I have, but I do think that they're repeating their tactics in every state. And so, just informationally, when you take this on, this is what you're gonna see, okay? So, number one, I jokingly said that we should rename the App Store bill the Employment Act for Contract Lobbyists, because basically everybody got hired up on one side or the other, and mainly the other. But what they come at you with from different directions is negatively impacting economic development. That was one of the things that we dealt with the filter bill, as well as the App Store bill. Obviously a falsehood at this point with the technology that's available. But in Alabama specifically, and many of you probably don't know this, but Tim Cook is an Auburn University grad and pretty influential in the state of Alabama, and he opined himself, which was somewhat daunting. They also threatened litigation on the First Amendment question, which is why the Paxton ruling is so important to this bill, and then also for age verification in the filter bill. They blame parents. They set up very nicely named 501c3s that are funded by big tech, that don't sound like they're funded by big tech, and then they show up to your committee hearings and blame parents and say, the reason why children are seeing pornography on their devices is because parents aren't parenting. They literally will say this out loud. So that's a situation. And then they point fingers at each other. So Google points a finger at Apple, Apple points a finger at Meta. I mean, it's like that meme, if you've ever seen it, and I have 7 kids, so this will make sense to you if you have them. That meme of Spider-Man and they're all pointing at each other. If you've ever seen that, that's exactly what I was thinking during all these committee hearings. They're just all pointing at each other, but they're not pointing at each other to blame each other. They're pointing at each other to get out of the liability of what's happening to our children. And so I just kept having to keep that in mind. And then the scapegoat is, parents and children really just need to be educated on this. It's not that we're predatory. It's not that we're making 30% cut off of the pornification of your children. It's not commerce that's the problem, or the love of money that's the problem. One, it's parents that are the problem, and also parents need to be educated. Well, I'm a mother of 7. I have 5 sons in my house right now, and 4 of those are teenagers. So this is something I live, like Melissa, has. I live on a daily basis, and whack-a-mole's being generous. It's very, very difficult to keep up. And apps that you wouldn't think that were being used for pornography purposes, even accidental exposure, like Walmart, like the Map app. There are tons of things that you would just not think of at all. So, and Melissa mentioned this on the amendments. So those are the overall tactics that you'll see from the lobbying groups. But the amendment process is really their bread and butter. So what they try to do is that first they try to codify the status quo, because the status quo benefits them monetarily and freedom-wise. From their perspective. The game apps and the education apps, they try to exempt them out, because who's not for education apps? Who doesn't want to teach their child to read on an app, or allow them to play a game while you're sitting in the dentist office? They try to exempt those out. Those are some of the worst apps. Bringing predators in, allowing strangers to communicate with your young children. And then the age assurance versus age verification. That is an amendment that I know Melissa's seen across states, which is basically just a step backwards. So we're not going to actually verify your age. We're just going to let you press a button that says you are, which of course people lie. Teen accounts. I'm sure that any of you who have Instagram, especially those of you who have teenagers and Instagram, I've been inundated with ads about how wonderful the teen accounts are for Instagram. And it's interesting because they're very effective marketers, clearly. They're billion-dollar companies. But what they're not telling you, and what people are not taking a step back and thinking is, why is there a teen app? Why is there a teen version of an app? Why can my 14-year-old son, which he doesn't have Instagram, but why can my 14-year-old son theoretically get on Instagram, sign a contract with a billion-dollar company for a special app just for him when he's 14 years old? And why would there be a special designation for an app for something that he's not even supposed to be a part of? They pretend like once you hit 13, you're an adult. And that's insane. There are no other circumstances where we treat 13-year-old boys or girls as full adults. They also try to create an opt-in, and then they also try to create immunity for themselves for their good faith efforts. That one really gets to me because their good faith, you see the quotes, there are not very many good faith efforts in this area. And so to create immunity for themselves instead of liability for themselves for the harm that they're allowing and sometimes enabling is one of those things that's just kind of pretty distasteful. So those are the kind of the tactics and the things, but I guess what was most surprising to me, and I'm not naive and I'm not new to this game. I used to be a contract lobbyist. I used to be a corporate lobbyist, so I get the joke. But what happened in Alabama was that the contract and corporate lobbyists on the other side did two major things, which is why we did not get the bill passed this session. One is that they understood, and I understand it too, but they used it to their advantage. They understood the political dynamic between our House and our Senate, and they used the House and the Senate against each other to their benefit so that the bill wouldn't pass. All of you legislators in the room, you're all nodding your heads. You've seen that story before. But the political dynamic there was utilized to their benefit and not ours. And then the other thing that they did that kind of surprised me, frankly, was the number of kind of external. I expected the pornography industry. I expected the big tech guys to show up. I expected, the kind of nonsense C3s. But I did not expect some of the retailers and some of the people who use apps for commerce, strictly for commerce, to be so against the bill. And it's clearly just a profit motive, but they want the ability to get to your kids. And some of those are sexual predators, and some of those, frankly, are profit predators. But they all came out of the woodwork. And we got very close. We passed the bill on bipartisan support, bipartisan co-sponsors, passed the bill in the Senate. We had the filter bill and the app bill. We were running both of those bills concurrently, which talk to me afterwards about the strategy on that. That was not, it's the way it happened organically with what was happening in our state and what had previously been done, but it was also used against us. So be careful. There are always several different bills about this. There's age verification. There's a filter bill. There's the app bill. There are a host of bills. I think there were 8 or 9 similar bills, and that's also being used as a tactic. But we got very close. We passed it through the Senate, went to House committee, failed in the first House committee. We diverted it to another House committee, and it failed for a lack of a quorum. And for those of you who have been on the political side of things more than the policy side of things, you know that when you fail for a lack of quorum, that is never an accident. And so it was very clear to us that the Speaker and that the House leadership did not want that specific bill to pass. They allowed the filter bill to pass, though it had been altered significantly. So all that to say, cautionary tale, learn from our mistakes. Happy to talk to anybody about kind of our route and what I would have done differently. We will be back at it. We're already back at it and putting pressure on our House leadership already. And I've already had meetings with our sponsors, and we will, you never know exactly what the legislative body is going to do, but I feel very confident that Alabama will pass the app bill in short order.
Yeah, we feel confident of that too, Stephanie. Just thank you for sharing that. That was so comprehensively helpful for everyone in here. Do you have any additional advice for statesmen who are thinking of running this, or any other bottom line FPC advice for people who run this?
I would say, I would say that be confident in your advocacy for this bill. This bill specifically has been highly vetted. It doesn't have the First Amendment issues that some of the content pieces of legislation have. That's another tactic that I didn't mention, which is one of the things that they try to do is shift gears to, well, what if we just restricted the type of content that could be accessed by certain ages? Well, then you actually get into First Amendment issues. This bill circumvents all of that, and that's why it's powerful, and that's why they hate it. But one other piece of advice, something that I thought that was very effective, speaking with legislators, and it's because it was true, because we're brokers of truth here. We did polling in the state, 600 voters, trying to figure out, where are parents in this? Where are Republicans? Where are Democrats? And 89% of Republicans in the state of Alabama supported this bill, and 75% of Democrats in the state of Alabama, and then 83% of parents across the aisle. And so the support for this is strong because the need for this is strong. So feel confident that you're walking into something that parents need, desire, and want, and children must have for their protection.
Amen. Excuse me, when was the last time you got 83% of a group across the aisle to agree on anything? And that's something I want you all to hear from this, is this is the most bipartisan policy issue area I've worked on in my time at FPA, period. It's not close. This is bipartisan it gets. It will surprise you who votes with you on this, who comes around to your side, if you can do what Stephanie is advising you to do. And speaking of that popularity, that's why this is SoConCon. There's a federal angle to this too. There's a federal App Store Accountability Act. To introduce that, I just have a few thoughts on it. I want to just play a video that summarizes an event that Digital Childhood Alliance organized on the Hill to lobby for it, that FPA was able to participate in.
It has been 26 years since Congress has passed meaningful child safety legislation.
We are the first generation of parents to parent in a digital age, and unfortunately our children are the social experiment.
During my child abuse pediatrics rotation, we discussed multiple very disturbing instances of known sex traffickers reaching out through chat functions in common applications such as Roblox to minors. Therefore, we support the bill's provisions for age verification, display of age ratings, and parental consent to allow parents to oversee and approve age-appropriate digital content.
Apple and Google have operated the largest unregulated commercial marketplace targeting children in American history. For nearly 2 decades, they've shifted nearly all responsibility for child safety onto parents and developers, making billions from systems that allow them to contract with minors, mislead families about app risks, and avoid verifying who's actually using their services.
There is no other brand that is more synonymous with being a chokehold than Google and Apple. They know all, they see all, they control all.
We as parents deserve the right to protect our children. We deserve the right to go to sleep at night without wondering what danger might find them tomorrow. We deserve the opportunity to consent or not before tech companies hijack our children's minds, because make no mistake, they are after our kids.
Apple did an internal review of the age rating of TikTok and reached out to them and said, this app should not be rated 12 plus, it should be rated 17 plus. And TikTok said, oh, thank you so much for that suggestion, but you know what, actually we're gonna keep it the same. And did Apple take it out of the App Store? Absolutely not.
This is the most legally unassailable, the most enforceable, and the most intuitive bill for parents to actually protect their kids in the digital age. And if we have Tim Cook making calls to Governor Greg Abbott, we have big tech on their heels, I say let's strike while the iron's hot, keep the momentum going, and let's get this thing down to the federal level.
Fortunately, for years, you've had people like those of you in this room who have been crying out for attention. That's how I got involved in this, especially after I met Melissa and she introduced me to this dark underworld where these things operate, and it opened my eyes as to the need for this. Your activism has helped tremendously. I'm not going to stop until Congress passes the App Store Accountability Act and until we stop big tech from profiting off of the innocence of kids.
That was a great day on the Hill, because we went from that event where everyone was speaking to members' offices, just visits, and all the excitement around it. It was really encouraging. It was all organized by you and our coalition, and we want you to know we're there on the Hill. Many of you are there on the Hill advocating for this too. And if you're not and you want to, FPA's Director of Government Affairs, Dylan Jeremiah, is here at the conference. I would encourage you to talk to him. He'll coordinate that effort with you. But for the statesmen in this room, if you want to run this bill, Out the door to the left, I'm doing what I did yesterday, is the Digital Childhood Alliance booth. They have cards. Can you hold that up for me, Melissa? They have cards with a QR code linking you to the text of the App Store Accountability Act. And they're going to be there to talk to you, if you want, about how to run it. I would encourage you to do it. Melissa said rightly that if you're going to run this bill, you need a thick skin and a spine of steel. Guess what, Statesman Academy class? That is who you are. You're all here because you are people of faith. You're all here because you're people of faith, and there is no greater source of security than what you already know, which is that your worth and redemption is found in the blood of Jesus. That's going to be your source of strength to do things like this. So I just want to encourage you, if you're intrigued at all, go talk to Melissa and Casey at their booth. Go see them, look at the text, talk through it. FPA is here to support you. We're going to do more remote activities throughout this fall to prepare you to run this bill in your state house.
That woman has a name. She's not a commodity. Your money and your time, your energy, you're part of the destruction of that human being.
I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
I don't want this to repeat in my kids.
Protect children, not porn!
This case is about protecting children.
I believe that we are going to change the world.
Now, Helen, I'm so glad you're here. I've been looking forward to getting to you now to talk about this other angle here. Because with this map, you see we've got all the bills we've passed or we've helped pass when it comes to age verification for pornography. I think people in this room understand why, at least generally, why that's important. Because pornography has been the driver of sexual disillusionment and so many of our issues that we push back against in the social conservative movement, but I don't think they fully understand what else it encompasses, the things we stand for in principle, but don't get as much of a chance to impact. You've helped more than a few people in this room pass one of those bills for online pornography in their state. We have 27 other states that still need to pass that, though, for age verification for pornography. It's FBA's position that every state and the federal government needs both bills. Exodus Cry is an anti-human trafficking organization. And I've asked you to be here because we don't think there's anyone better in the world at explaining the connection between pornography and the human trafficking industry. In fact, they're one and the same industry at the end of the day. I would like you to explain that connection to our friends. And feel free to introduce Exodus Cry and what you guys do, because this is your first time at SoConCon, and we're just glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Joseph. And yeah, we're an anti-human trafficking organization that work nationally and internationally, based out in California. And we fight trafficking primarily through shifting culture, through films and media and campaigns, and then working on legislation as well as providing services to victims. And I moved here from the UK 12 years ago to work for Exodus Cry. Before that, I worked in Cambodia for an anti-trafficking organization, and it was when I was in Cambodia that I actually first made that real tangible connection between pornography and trafficking. And so this, Melissa and I were both saying earlier, the topics we're speaking about, we could spend a whole day unpacking these. So in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to share some of the intersections between pornography and trafficking. So like I said, when I was in Cambodia, I will never forget speaking with a girl who had been trafficked from the age of 11 from a rural village, and she personally told me that Western sex buyers, white men, would show her pornography in the brothel in Phnom Penh, on their tablets, on their phones, on their devices, and get her to copy what they were seeing. They were presenting to her, they'd flown halfway across the world, presenting to her the fantasy that they had been consuming, and now this 11-year-old trafficked girl had to act that out. Now, not many people in this room will have heard that directly from a victim, and I tell you, the first time you ever hear, it's like you cannot move on from that, the horror of what that reality. And so we've made a series of different documentaries. One documentary that's coming out in a couple of weeks is about the demand side of trafficking, the men who are sex buyers. So we know economically traffickers wouldn't have any money if it wasn't for the buyers who are purchasing women and children in trafficking, in the sex trade. Every single one of these male sex buyers that we interviewed for the documentary described how it was pornography that began their journey. Now, it doesn't mean that every consumer of pornography becomes a sex buyer and flies to Cambodia. That's not what we're saying. But it just shows, I think, a real clear correlation that on the journey of a sex buyer, it always begins with a pornography addiction, and that leads then to behavior for some. So what we see is pornography is the marketing fuel of prostitution, of trafficking. It is driving this behavior. Another really clear intersection that we saw, so 5 years ago, our organization realized that many of the biggest pornography websites in the world, Pornhub being one example, did not verify age or consent on any of the 13 million videos that they had uploaded at the time. And we launched this campaign called Trafficking Hub that really exposed how the website was rife with illegal videos of underage trafficking victims, rape victims, because there was a woeful, inadequate moderation process. And we know that the more content on these sites, the more money, and so it wasn't in their financial interest to modify this content. And so we began a campaign, and I'm happy to report that, in the 5 years since that has happened, 91% of all content on Pornhub has had to be removed. That's over 10 million unverified videos that they were forced to remove, and that's an ongoing battle. And just like we see with someone who is a drug dealer, that comparison is often made with sex trafficking of you can sell drugs one time, but if you sell a woman or child, the money that you can make off them, they're a drug that you can sell time and time and time again. Well, I'll take it a step further when it comes to pornography. If you're selling a trafficking victim, if you film that exploitation, then there's an entire whole new stream of revenue opened up where you can monetize the content and videos. And I've worked with many trafficking victims. I would say now the majority filmed the part of their exploitation journey involved being filmed, and that the content of that being uploaded. And so with when we see that the main online distributors of pornography are rife and riddled with illegal videos of trafficking. I've had people say to me, well, say I'm on a site like Pornhub, how do I know which girls are underage or which are consenting, which girls are being trafficked? And I said, well, how would you know? Like, there really isn't a way to actually know. And so we're trying to really encourage people to ask the questions of the real lives and stories behind those in pornography. Then the third way is, we all know that underage child sexual abuse material exists, otherwise known as child pornography. It exists all over the United States. The United States is unfortunately the biggest consumer of that material. One victim I've worked with really closely was trafficked in Oregon in the hardcore pornography industry from age 14 to 17. And she told me she'd been trafficked in prostitution from age 11 to 14 before that. She said her exploitation in hardcore pornography in Oregon was even more traumatizing because it wasn't just one or two men that she was having to be exploited by. Now there was an entire room and gangbang rape scenes as a 14-year-old girl, when the cameras are there, the energy and exploitation, the violence. She said that the trauma she experienced from being trafficked in pornography was by far the worst, and she's actually written a book about that particular piece of her exploitation. We made a 3-part documentary series about exploitation, even in the mainline, legal porn industry in Los Angeles, where I'm based, and that's available to watch online. But you see, trafficking always refers to anyone under the age of 18 in the sex trade period, or any time there's an element of force, fraud, or coercion involved. And we see that across the board in pornography. Even girls or guys who enter over the age of 18, in the contracts that they're made to sign, there is so much coercion. They think that they're signing up to do one thing, and then when they're on set, they are forced to do a whole manner of other things. And I've worked with girls who were actually very violently raped by the pornographer on set, and that content is still online today. And they've said to me, just the knowledge of that, it's like videos of me being raped over and over again are online with millions of people around the world watching. How horrifying is that? We see that pornography is used to groom. In so many child abuse cases, pornography is used to educate, normalize, sanitize what is taking place, and that goes for many child sexual abuse and child trafficking cases as well. Pornography is used to educate. And the final thing I'll just say on this point is I see the porn industry as actually a predator. Like we've heard today, and we'll unpack even more, not only are they not implementing age verification when the technology to do that has existed for a long time, they are actively pushing back. They're putting a lot of money into resisting all efforts for accountability and protecting children. 62% of kids who are exposed to porn, it was unintentional. So porn, they aren't always seeking out porn. Porn is finding them. And we've just seen that this is an industry that makes a lot of money from children and adolescents looking at porn. In the entire sex trade ecosystem worldwide, prostitution, pornography, a lot of people want to kind of neatly categorize, well, there's human trafficking, and then there's all the consensual pornography, prostitution, OnlyFans. They want to like lump that into a different thing because they don't want to, it feels more comfortable to have the idea that most girls who are in porn, they want to be, they choose to be. Most girls in prostitution, they want to be, they find it empowering, and then we've got to focus on going after child sex trafficking, yes. But actually, it's all one of the same. Trafficking just describes one pathway into exploitation, and the entire ecosystem is rife and riddled with the same harms and exploitation. Yes, there is a scale, but the final point I just think is really important to underscore that we see exploitation across the entire ecosystem.
But thank you, Helen. I want to give everybody a minute to take that in, because for many of you, this will be the first time you've heard anything like this. The notion that people in this industry are not there by choice, they're there by coercion, is a heavy thing to come to terms with the first time you hear it. And Helen, the things you carry are so heavy, but you carry them with a lot of grace, and just by educating all of us in this, you do us a great service. I want to ask you now that we understand that connection, passing these bills makes a difference in all of that. Help us understand how passing a bill protecting kids from exposure to porn in the first place, passing an App Store Accountability Act, how does that reduce the impact of this industry? How does it combat this trafficking for sexuality? And just what is the social impact on reducing the influence of this industry of pornography and sex trafficking on children and families, especially when it comes to the work you do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just even that revelation and thought that imagine a child's first introduction to sexuality is watching a series of videos of girls being raped, maybe not even depictions of acted rape, but actual real rape on a site like Pornhub. Like, the horror that we're in this day and age, that at no other time in history has that ever been a potential reality for our children. The access to pornography has never been so young. The content of pornography has never been so violent, horrifying, unspeakable. And the documentary that I mentioned we made, that's coming out in a couple of weeks, the fact that every single sex buyer was exposed to porn as a child is really, really important and compelling. The idea that kids are being exposed to videos of real exploitation. So after the campaign that we did about Pornhub, we launched another campaign called Protect Children, Not Porn. This was about 4 years ago, and I remember at the time, an expert in DC said to me, Helen, honestly, the US is probably going to be the last country to pass age verification. She's like, I see Europe and Australia, Canada, all these countries passing age verification first because of all the free speech protections that the porn industry is hidden behind for so many years. And I was so shocked by that statement. I thought, what a discouraging perspective. I mean, this is someone who's worked in this field for years, and she, that was genuinely how she felt. She thought the battle in the US is like any other because they hide behind the Constitution, the First Amendment, and use free speech as this protection. Like, what a despicable notion. And I remember being like, no, America's a country that values children, that fights human trafficking and values liberty and all of these things like that. I cannot believe that. And And we were campaigning for a couple of years, and then the amazing Representative Lori Schlegel from Louisiana, she heard the story of Billie Eilish, who is the pop star who described at age 11 as a homeschool girl, she was exposed to hardcore graphic pornography, and she said on this podcast that it gave her night terrors. She said, it destroyed my brain. I hate porn. I hate what it did to my childhood, my adolescence. And Representative Schlegel in January 2023 introduced the very first age verification bill, and I happened to be attending a pornography convention in Hollywood the following week. I went as undercover because I found out that the porn industry were, at their convention, had a whole seminar about how do we fight back against these anti-trafficking organizations trying to legislate against us. And someone in the porn industry sent that talk to me, and they were like, I'm pretty sure they're going to be talking about Exodus Cry and other groups. You should go and hear what they have to say about you. So I went with a friend, and they mentioned Exodus Cry about 7 times, and every time they did, I looked down like, that's not, who could that possibly be? But they were really, really angry about what just happened in Louisiana the week before, and they were like, this is where it all starts. Like, we need to fight dirty like they fight dirty. We need to fight back. They were extremely anxious and upset that this Louisiana bill had been introduced, and there was no acknowledgement of, yes, we call ourselves the adult industry, we should protect ourselves from kids. It was all about, how do we overturn it? How do we push back? What's the plan? What's the strategy? And they were using quite like militant language. It was quite intense. And then it's been amazing to see in 2 years, we've seen 23 states pass age verification, and the Paxton decision literally opens the gate for all 50 states and the rest of the world. And I was out in Norway a few months ago. The government asked us to present on age verification because they're seeing what's happening in the US. So we're in like an incredible moment of history, and what happened with the Supreme Court literally just feels like the most incredible miracle. We were protesting outside the Supreme Court. Joseph was there, and the Free Speech Coalition, the main lobbying arm of the porn industry, they were there, and they literally were like, oh, it's Exodus Cry, doing their little protest, and they took selfies and tweeted it, and one guy literally shouted out to us from their group, well, we've got free speech on our side. They were so confident that they would win this. And when a few days after the Paxton decision, I sat in on I like to go undercover clearly. I found a way to get in on this webinar that they were hosting, processing the decision, and they were, again, shocked, mad. They literally used the phrase, guys, we lost the championship on this one. And they know that a new precedent has been set. I remember when Pornhub tweeted a meme of Baby Yoda, and we all know who Baby Yoda is, right? So in the reflection of Baby Yoda's eyes was the Pornhub logo, and the caption said, 10 minutes after my parents leave the room. So Pornhub themselves, we're in on the joke that kids watch porn, and it's like, yeah, 10 minutes after your parents leave the room, you're on Pornhub. And we were like, how old is Baby Yoda meant to be? 8? 6? Baby Yoda? The youngest that I have heard of a child accessing pornography through an app was a 2-year-old. And this woman was extremely horrified that this 2-year-old little girl had been accessing porn through an app. We know that the average age of first introduction to porn is 11 years old, but it's actually getting younger each year. The average age, I was told, of a child getting a smartphone is 10 years old. So we're like so overdue in this movement. I feel like the tide is turning, but the younger generation has been this unfortunate social experiment. And people ask, well, should you have age verification on the porn sites or go after it from the app and device space? And we're like, yes, everything and above it isn't one angle. This needs to be absolutely addressed from safeguarding from every angle. Accountability for the porn sites. They are resisting having any age verification because they don't want adults to be freaked out. Because you know what Louisiana reported? After 3 months of age verification, Pornhub reported an 80% decrease of traffic on their website from users. So that tells us that age verification is not only effective at protecting children and adolescents, but even an additional layer of accountability to the adults as well. And so, yeah, I know. The last story I'll just share on that is, I heard from this 15-year-old boy once who came up to me after a talk, and he said, I don't know what to do. Pornography for me feels like a drug I'm addicted to, but it's like the drug is in my pocket, it's on my phone, and I have to leave class, honestly, every hour of the day to go to the bathroom and masturbate to porn. And he's like, and I want to get free so bad, this is ruining my life, but I don't even know what to do because it's right there on my phone. Like, I know how to get around it. And the compassion I felt for that young boy in that moment, he'd been watching porn for years, it had become totally a drug to him. And we can't expect kids to overcome this by themselves. Like, they are dying. Imagine if drug dealers were injecting our children with heroin in elementary schools. Can you imagine the outrage from parents, the lawsuits? And yet this is happening in the digital world every single day to children. And so there needs to be that level of absolute outrage, and we will not stop fighting until there is a change.
Your comparison, yeah. Your comparison to pornography as heroin is not just a metaphor. Like, we have research that shows that that's true. It's one of my favorite comparisons to use too. This is the Social Conservative Policy Conference. All of us work on some level of social issues to conserve things. So as you process what Helen's told you, I want you to think about, use your creativity to think about the other issue areas that you may not immediately think this impacts, but it could. I think of example for the life issue, because so many of us work to oppose the abortion movement. Abortion is usually the result of an unplanned pregnancy. An unplanned pregnancy is just what it sounds like. But if pornography is sex ed to our kids, if we can change that by protecting them from exposure to it in the first place, just statistically speaking, you're less likely to have more dangerous unprotected sex outside of marriage, and therefore you're less likely to have unplanned pregnancies, and you're less likely to have more abortions. This is a logical chain that's not really intuitive immediately, but I would just encourage you to play around with those in your mind. Creatively think about other issue areas this impacts, because in the short time, comparatively short time I've worked for FBA, I've never seen an issue area affect so many of our other issue areas like this one. So thank you, Helen, for helping us understand that. I have one more question for you before we get to some audience questions. So you've talked about your films a few times in the course of what you described to us. I want you to tell us just a little bit more about that, because that's a totally new opportunity for advocacy for people in this room, particularly our FPCs. I want them to think about this. Your films are just so effective at generating awareness first. It's how I became aware of this. I'm going to embarrass Helen a little bit. I saw Nefarious Merchant of Souls on YouTube as part of my law school legal internship to oppose human trafficking. It was a mandatory part of my curriculum. And that's what exposed me to all this truth. That was my moment where I understood this. That's what you all do so well. One of the many things you do well. But you've got a new film coming out specifically about the impact of pornography on women as well. So you've talked about the one about people who buy sex. You have another one coming out eventually about the impact of women, or pornography on women. And I think that's going to be helpful for you all in this room, because the notion is pornography is a men's problem. Spoiler alert. It's not. And some of the women you feature in that film I got to meet during our event for the Paxton case before the case was decided, and they're just heroes. It was such an honor to meet them. So I just hope you could tell us about your films themselves, how they work. Maybe this particular film will be really appealing to people. And you've got a new project coming out, which we can preview when you want. So tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. So in a couple of weeks, we're launching our film platform that will house all of our films and documentaries. Right now they're kind of here, there, like some of them are on Netflix, some of them are on YouTube, and we just want one place that hosts all of them. So on July 30th, World Day Against Trafficking, we're releasing that platform. And I really do believe that films, when they capture stories, I've seen our documentaries being used to not only educate, but really activate and awaken people, and we love using them for high impact screenings. They've been able to be screened in parliaments around the world, at the UN, before Congress. And one film that we made was called Raised on Porn. It's about the general impact of pornography on children. And some of the feedback we got from that was that it mainly focused on the impact to boys and men, and that was a bit of an oversight on our part. And like Joseph mentioned, historically, I think the view has been that pornography, as far as addiction is concerned, is more of a male problem. But then Pornhub came out with a report that 1 in 3 visits to their site are girls, and we've seen a huge increase in young girls and females watching pornography. So we decided that topic deserved its own documentary, and I've had the honor of producing that film, and it'll probably come out next year. We're still working on doing interviews, but it's been really, really heartbreaking to sit and hear the stories of young girls and how they were exposed to porn, and because of this day and age, majority was on their phones, or through social media or on the internet. Across the board, we see some of the mental health impacts for both boys and girls being similar, related to anxiety, depression, shame, viewing women as objects, the desire to then act out what they're seeing. And a good friend of mine is a nurse called Heidi Olsen that has some of the most tragic information that she sees in the hospitals of teenagers and children who are experiencing sexual assault injuries that are directly inspired by pornography, and it's not by adults, it's by peers. And so like young boys and teenage boys and girls are then acting out on each other. And so that is a really horrifying element. But some of the unique mental health impacts that we've seen in women from both the research that's been done, finally there's been more research done on this, self-hatred, eating disorders, self-harm, extreme shame. For some of the girls, there's even more shame than the boys because it's more social acceptance to have a porn addiction if you're a young boy. And if you're a teenage girl, especially in faith-based communities, they experience a lot of shame and therefore isolation. It's affected their sexuality. And one of the most tragic things is creating a desire for violent sex. The vast majority of pornography depicts sex in very, very violent ways. And so if that is their sexual imprint and education, they're seeing all these videos of girls being strangled and choked. Like the tragedy is they then begin seeking those out in their own relationships directly because of pornography showing them that. A few weeks ago, the UK actually announced that they are wanting to make it illegal to depict strangling and choking in pornography. And so I think that in the future, we're going to see more regulations even around the content related to pornography. And I'm really excited about that. I have a lot of hope for that. We had 5 of the girls from the film come out with us in Washington, D.C. They shared at the press conference. I mean, the courage that it takes to share such a personal story, and many of us in the crowd were weeping hearing them. And my hope is that when the film comes out next year, now it is our goal in the next couple of years to see all 50 states pass age verification and all these other bills around it, and a federal level bill. And I hope that the film can be used to push forward efforts for that. And so, the films, you can watch all of them. Some of them are quite heavy, like there's a couple of them that I've asked my mum not to watch, like disclaimer, really, really intense. The series where we go undercover behind the scenes in the porn industry, we have porn directors on camera boasting about the sexual assaults. They didn't know the angle that the documentary would take, and some of these pornographers' egos were so huge that they invited our crew into their home, where they then, one director boasts on camera that his goal is to find out what a boundary line is of a girl, what she's willing to do on camera, and then smash that boundary line on camera and capture her pain and shock. And our crew are like stunned listening to this, and we're asking questions like, how do you feel about creating videos, that the fantasy of a molested 12-year-old girl being raped by her brother or stepfather, like creating these fantasies that incest is hot, molestation is hot, sex with a 12-year-old is hot. How do you feel about that? As a film director, as a film producer, porn producer, and these guys begin squirming in their seats because, of course, they're in it to make money off of a very, very dark and perverted fantasy that, unfortunately, there is a desire for. But we absolutely have to hold this industry accountable, and I'm just overwhelmed with hope at this moment more than ever before in my 15 years in this work. We're seeing the tide turn more than ever before. We're seeing people understand the exploitation taking place in porn, trafficking. So much that went on underground that was unknown, unspoken about, is coming into the light. And yes, there's still a lot more work to be done, as we all know. But this is a real moment of hope for our movement, and like, let's take it further. Let's regulate this industry out of existence.
Amen to that. You all can do that. The power is in your hands. And that's something we haven't been able to say for probably 3 or 4 generations legitimately, because of this false constitutional jurisprudence that says pornography is protected free speech. It's not. You'll never be able to convince me that the founders had that in mind when they wrote the First Amendment. And so that's going to be part of the next step. If we're ever going to make the final difference in this, that has to go. So the point is, the mandate's now back on us. We have the initiative. All that we have presented to you now is the first sword that the social conservative movement has been able to forge in generations against this malign industry. I would encourage you to wield it. Take advantage of it, because now we're at the point where we can't complain anymore about not having any power. The initiative is ours. If we don't take it, it's us who will be at fault. So I would just encourage you, Statesman Academy alumni, FPCs, you have the power for this, and there are numerous national organizations here to support you, including FPA, Helen, Melissa, their teams are all on our expert resource list, including Heidi Olson, who I'm so glad you mentioned. Come reach out to us. We want to help. So unfortunately, we're out of time. I think we have a little bit of a break now before the next session, but just want to thank you all. Will you join me in thanking our panelists?